1929, at the beginning of the Great Depression, 1/5 of all American families still lived on farms. It's hard to believe that there are still people alive today in Westerly who grew up on a farm during the Great Depression. Life was difficult, and Barbara Unkuri's story of growing up on a farm on Bradford Road with no running water or electricity is one of survival, courage, and hope.
And we were a lot of people that, well, it was the Depression then, you know. And sometimes we didn't have nothing to eat. So my brother would go over to Dolan's Market across the street, which isn't there no more either, and get a bunch of bananas and give us each a banana for lunch. And sometimes the principal would give us a little carton of milk. She felt sorry for us.
Where were you born?
Westerly Hospital.
And how many years had it been open?
I think 2 or 3 years before I was born there, yeah. Most of the children in my family were born at home. But I was 12 pounds something, and I guess there was a problem, so my poor mother had to go to the hospital. Yeah.
And what year were you born?
1929. So she's December 30th, 1929. 29 was the year of the Great Depression anyway.
Do you want to talk about your parents and where they immigrated from and where your dad lived?
My mother immigrated from Germany when she was 7 years old. There was 4 girls in the family. And they originally went to New Jersey, but then they ended up moving down to the Stonington area. My father was what they call a swamp Yankee. Bill Cook, he'd been here forever, you know what I mean? But way back, I guess he was a mix of Irish and English. And I was one of 8 children.
One of 8?
Yeah.
And then your husband, do you want to say where his family came from?
They came from Finland, and they first went to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. That's where he was born, however. And then they moved to Hopkinton, which is in Burdickville, you know, that big house on the hill. And they had 9 children. She had 4 sons, and they were all drafted into the service. And one of them didn't come back, Richard. He got killed in the war.
And where did you say was one of the first places you lived, and then kind of after that?
Well, I heard that we lived down in Pierce Street area when I was little, but I didn't know that. The first house that I know we lived in was on Granite Street.
And then you said you went to Quarry Hill School?
That was my first school, yeah.
Your first school. And can you describe what it was like going to school there? You walked to the school.
Oh, yeah.
From home.
In them days, kids weren't pampered. You know, they didn't even walk you to school. They just said, go to school, and you went.
And you said, how many siblings do you have?
7.
I know that you lived Haswell Street, and how long did you live there for?
We lived there a couple years, I guess. I know I was 8 years old, and I went to Park Avenue School, and that's the day of the hurricane. And we all was in school, and the wind got so bad that they sent us all home. And it's a miracle we got home because the wind was so hard that I had to press myself to walk into it to get home because it was Park Avenue. Then I had to go up, I forgot the name of the other street right off, and then onto Haswell Street. Mm-hmm. And when I got home, there was this old man that lived next door. He lived in a basement apartment. He crossed the street to go into the garage. I don't know what he was looking for. And the minute he got in the garage went right over, and he was standing there with the car. Yeah. I mean, it was really bad, the 38 hurricane. Oh, and right after the hurricane, we moved to the Bradford Road, right up on top of the hill, and the bus driver called it Cookie Hill because a bunch of whole little cookies. Well, like I said, we moved down there right after the hurricane, and the grass was this high because nobody ever mowed it. It was a farm with 100 acres of land, and the barn in back had blown down from the hurricane.
Just down the road from the farm Barbara lived on is the Barlow Preserve, the former Barlow Farm, and now the headquarters of the Westerly Land Trust. There you can still see vestiges of what Depression-era farm life was like when Barbara was a young girl in the 1930s.
And what did you say the rent was at the time?
I think it was $8 a month. $8 a month, can you believe it? For a farm with 100 acres?
Yeah, now.
And I lived there from 8 years old till 16. I really enjoyed it. I mean, we were a bunch of kids. We'd be out blueberrying or go fishing. There's a pond across the railroad tracks. It's amazing. My mother didn't know where we were half the time. Here we are crossing railroad tracks. I had a lot of good memories of the farm. Selico's had a little store right across from the dump, and I'd walk we were near the swamp area, the farm, and I'd walk all the way down there if I had a nickel, which was very seldom, and get an old Nick bar and chew it slowly on the way home so it would last. But we thought nothing of walking miles and miles, And then there's a quarry right off the Bradford Road. We used to go swimming down there. None of us could swim, but there was a ledge, and we'd stand on the ledge and bring a bar of soap and we'd take a bath. Because we didn't have no lights and no water in the house at the farm. The good old days.
How old were you when you finally got lights in your house?
We never did on the farm.
Never?
No. When we left, there still was no. I wished I owned it now. I really missed that house. But it didn't bother us, and we didn't know any different. We didn't say, woe is me. That was the way we lived, and it didn't bother us at all. Now I wouldn't want to go back to that. I'm spoiled because I have, running water and all that good stuff. But at the time, it really didn't bother me at all. We were free to go do whatever we wanted. We were, go blueberrying, or I remember laying out in the field and watching the snapple turtle lay eggs in the sand, just laying there watching,
Yeah, you had outhouses, I'm sure.
Oh, yes. And I was kind of afraid to go in the outhouse because I always figured there might be a spider or something under the seat, Even to this day, I pick up my toilet seat before I go to the bathroom, make sure there ain't a spider because of that. Well, you never know what was crawling under there, right? And we didn't have toilet paper either. We just used a magazine or catalog or whatever. That was how it was in them days. A lot of people lived like that in them days. There used to be a mission on the other side of the bridge in Pawcatuck. They called it the Mission. And Dagmar Smith used to be in there. She ran it, or was in charge of it. And people that were poor could go in there and get clothes. Or, they had a big barrel full of socks, and then they'd have, different clothes. I remember going in there, because we were poor. We didn't have nothing, Well, there were a lot of families poor in them days, too, But they didn't give you checks like they do now. In the olden days, they'd embarrass you, like if you had a food order, like at the A&P was down by the bridge, and if you went in there, they'd holler it right out loud so the whole store would know. It was embarrassing. But you're a kid, so you didn't have the nerve to say, did you have to do that? Wow. But that's how they treated you. They thought because you were poor, you were stupid. But you weren't.
Right.
You were smarter than they were, actually.
I know you said, because of no running water, can you describe kind of how you guys all showered and washed up?
We didn't shower.
But how you washed up at the time?
Yeah, well, we'd have a thing of water, like a basin of water and soap, and do the best we could, But we had a pail. We'd go down the well and fill it up with water, and there was a dipper in there, and we all drank out of it. Today, we wouldn't do such a thing. You know what I mean? Everybody drinking out of the same thing. Now we're fussy, and we don't want somebody else's glass. But we survived. And evidently, we built up a good resistance because we were hardly ever sick. We were all really pretty healthy. So you do build up a resistance, you know. I told you how my father would kill a chicken, which I didn't like. He'd lay it on a chopping block and cut its head off and throw it, and the poor chicken was still running with his head cut off. The good old days.
Yeah. Do you remember any neighbors that you had growing up?
When we moved to the farm, we didn't have any neighbors unless you went down the road, or, you know. So we just stayed right there on our little conclave, you know, just our family. So we didn't play with other children or nothing. We just played with each other.
What age did you go to school until you had to start working?
16. I had no choice. I was in the 11th grade. I had one more year to graduate. But my mother died, and all the kids, we all got separated into different homes. And I was on my own. I had to go to work. Nobody pampered you in those days, you know what I mean? Really. You had to get a job and support yourself. You had to grow up fast.
Mm-hmm. How did you meet your husband?
My brother was married, and he knew him from before the service, because my husband was in the war for about 5 years overseas before he came back. And when he came back, he went to visit my brother, and I happened to be there because when my mother died, the whole family broke up. And so I lived with my sister-in-law. That's how I met him. Mm-hmm. I was 16 when I met him, and I was 18 when I married him. Mm-hmm. When I was 21, I had a daughter. She only lived for 2.5 months. She was born with an enlarged heart, so she died. Then I had 2 sons after that. One of them was your grandfather.
Yes.
Yeah, I got, I think, seven grandchildren, about maybe 10 great-grandchildren. Mm-hmm. Oiva, my husband, when he first got out of the service, he bought this piece of land in Charleston and built us a house. And then he made a subdivision further down the road on the land we own. He was a builder. He was a carpenter. He was a mason, an electrician, plumber. He could do everything. He was a jack of all trades, really.
Do you have any friends from, you know, I guess older ages, like Mary Lou you could describe? Do you have any friends that...
No, all my friends are gone. My sister Helen was one of my best friends. And Mary Lou, my niece, she was really a great friend. I wish she was still here, but stuff happens, you know?
And your first job, where did you work?
I worked at Moore's Mill, off and on. When I had a baby, I'd stay home a while, but then I'd go back to work. So mostly, that was my first job.
And what did you do there?
Worked in the weave shop, tying rubber beams and twisting warps. You know, they made elastic fabrics, you know. Then later in years, I worked at Homefront in the office as an administrative assistant, which I really loved that job. Well, I liked the job in Moore's too.
Could you also describe what it was like to have to leave school at 16 and start, you know, working?
I don't know. It was, I don't know how to describe it. It was kind of hard on me because I was so bashful, and we didn't know a lot of people. We kind of just all stayed together at the farm, you know? So it was very hard to go in the mill, you know, because if somebody even said hello to me, my face would turn all red. I was so bashful, you know. I was embarrassed of myself, you know. So anybody looking at me would say, "What did they say to her? Look at her face." But it was just not, you know, just anything. It took me years to get over my bashfulness.
How many years did you work at Moore's Mill?
Oh, off and on, up and, oh God. Many years, off and on, though, you know. But I didn't go to home front health care till after my husband died. That was in '86. And I worked there till I was 70. But before that, I worked in Moores from 16 to, I don't know, off and on, you know.
How about Westerly? What do you think has changed the most about Westerly since you were young?
Well, I know Westerly expanded a lot after. None of this stuff was up on Granite Street at the time. It used to be just houses, and now it's all commercial. So it's changed a lot. If we wanted anything, we had to go down right into town, you know, like McCormick's, Ames, Woolworths, all them stores, you know.
Who had like the greatest influence on you in your life?
I can't think of anybody, and I think I was my own influence on me. I can't think of anybody.
Well, how do you
I think just because of my life situation, I influenced myself to be who I am. That's all I can say, because you know, we didn't know many people either, except the immediate family, you know.
So you would say you're really independent?
Yeah, I influenced myself.
Do you want to talk about, you know, kind of how you feel about what it is to be a woman today and women's rights today compared to then?
Things were different. We were subservient, you know. I mean, everything was what the man wanted, not what the woman wanted. I guess by now the women have had it, so now they're coming out of the woodwork. Men were more domineering then, you know what I mean? It was a different way of living. Not that it was a good way, because it wasn't. Because it's nice to feel free and have a mind of your own. In them days, you didn't have a mind of your own. You had to do what they want. You know, so it's nice to have a mind of your own and do what you want once in a while.
So you'd say it's changed in a positive direction?
Oh, God, yes.
So I know you moved to the farmhouse when you were around, was it 8 to 16 you were there?
Yeah.
So you lived at the farmhouse until you were 16, and then you moved in with your sister?
My sister-in-law.
Okay, your sister-in-law and your brother. And then you met Oiva when you were 16.
Yeah.
And that was after he came back from the war.
Yeah.
And then you got married at 18. Right. And I believe at the time he was 31. When they got married.
Yeah.
And how long after that did he start building in Charlestown?
Well, a house that he started building right away. Before we even got married, he was building that house down by the river. But later he made that subdivision, but that was I can't remember what year. Maybe in the 50s. Around 52, 53, he started the subdivision. There's about a dozen houses on it, you know. And he built houses in other areas also. And I still live on that land. He had a workshop up there, and then he had a big area where he stored lumber and stuff. And then he always liked to be busy building, so he made a nice apartment up there, and that's where I still live, up in the workshop apartment. And I still like it there. It's peaceful and quiet.
No neighbors, really?
Yeah. There's neighbors, but they're not right on top of you, you know. You can go out, open the door, and just peaceful. I love my little apartment.
When did your husband pass?
1986. He died of lymphoma.
And how old was he?
He was 69. Yeah. Lymphoma is cancer of the lymph nodes. I didn't know what to do. You just sit, you know what I mean? So I went to work at Homefront. And that was like a lifesaver, you know, to keep me occupied. And I bought a brand new car. I went to the credit union and got it approved so that when I went to the dealership, I could say I had the money, you know. It took me 5 years to pay for that little Buick, but I paid it. I never missed a, but that helped me a lot, just going to work and getting out of the house. Otherwise, you're just sitting there feeling bad all day after day. And, you know, that's no way to live.
What is your life like now?
Well, I don't know how to describe it. It's great. I'm very independent, and I love being independent. I have a nice home, and I have a nice family, and things are doing good. Except I'm getting old and falling apart. But other than that, I'm doing good. I'm 94.
What are some of your hobbies? Well, you could talk about, you know, like all your, like your birds and like how long you've been getting the paper, your birds, like some things you enjoy doing now.
I just took my bird feeders down. I usually feed them till May, but the raccoons come out at night and keep knocking the bird feeder down. So I got sick of that, so I said, that's it. So I just took them down last week. But I fed them all winter. And this raccoon was huge. It didn't need anything to eat.
Where are some of like the places you like to go now? I know.
Well, I like to shop. I like to go to secondhand shops. I like to go grocery shopping. I like to go out and eat. I like simple things, really.
We keep it simple.
Yeah.
We hang out.
Yeah, keep it simple.
If you kind of look back, do you have a moment that is one of the happiest or like the most satisfying that you have?
I don't know.
Or maybe something you're proud of doing?
Actually, I'm proud of myself for doing what I've done, you know?
Do you have any philosophies or advice that you think would stick out that you could give people?
Be kind. Do good. I don't know, I think that kind of covers things.
Just be kind and do good?
Yeah. That's my religion, to do good.
Every day is keep smiling.
Yeah, we were very poor. We hardly had anything to eat, so now I'm grateful that I can go in the store and buy whatever I want to eat, you know. But I remember when I was at Quarry Hill School, there was nothing to eat in the house. So I found a box of cocoa, you know, the bitter cocoa, and I mixed it with sugar and water, and I ate it, and I got really sick. And now if I just smell cocoa, it makes me think of when I was 5 years old with that, trying to make something to eat, you know. But we survived.
Yeah.
We were very healthy. Thank God.